To a game that was praised for its stunning visuals, solid gameplay, and clear inspiration to that of the Gears of War series, to a spin-off that would ultimately go down as one of mobile's beloved multiplayer cult classics, to now a game that can only be described as a blatant imitation of Destiny, before eventually later shifting gears and turning into an Overwatch clone. Today I'll be revisiting the Shadowgun series and work my way up to see how it got to where it ultimately stands today. Our journey first starts with a small Czech game studio founded in 2008 called Madfinger Games, who at the time had only been responsible for a couple of some pretty niche games, including a basic puzzle game, a hack-and-slash samurai game, and a violent Christmas romp. However, the studio's fortune would change in the summer of 2011 when they showcased Shadowgun at E3, where gamers alike got to play the game and get a hands-on look at it.
Totally playing Shadowgun right now.
Eventually, the game would release later that year on September 28, 2011 on iOS and later Android. Upon its release, the game for the most part received largely positive reviews, though not without criticism, with many articles immediately labeling it as the Gears of War clone on your phone due to its many striking similarities. And while that may be, for its time I'd say it was a definitive breakthrough in mobile gaming. Truly, what other mobile game at the time offered such a quality console-like experience right on your smartphone that wasn't just a remake of an already existing title? In Shadowgun, the player assumes the role of John Slade, a bounty hunter and renowned member of the Shadowgun hired by the corrupt intergalactic corporation known as Toltec, put on a mission to capture and kill Dr. Edgar Simon, a rogue bioengineer who stole genetic samples and fled to the planet Eve.
Yeah, no worries. I'll bag the doc and get him back to you. In one piece. Or two, depending on his mood.
Good luck, Mr. Slade.
Assisting Slade on this journey is his android co-pilot Sarah, who offers her assistance and occasional sarcasm throughout most of the game. Much of Shadowgun's gameplay is mostly composed of cover-based shooting and light puzzle solving mixed in. A lot of the game's environments reside inside industrial type areas where the player will spend most of their time tackling the game's enemies, that range from mutants to robots, both big and small. When not engaged in combat, the game will offer those light puzzles I mentioned, such as buttons you have to locate and shoot, or Simon-esque hacking minigames to progress and obtain weapons. There's not really a wide arsenal of weapons, but they include your typical assault rifle, shotgun, grenade launcher, and rocket launcher. Then later, a plasma gun is introduced in the mix with the Leftover expansion, which, speaking of, on December 21st, 2011, a DLC expansion titled Shadowgun: The Leftover would be released free of charge for players who had already owned the game. The DLC added 4 new playable levels designed to wrap up the story of Shadowgun's main campaign, which up to the end saw Slade confronting Simon, who had happened to transfer his brain into a giant mech. By the end of the game, this leads to a boss fight against this mecha Simon that, after destroying, leaves the player with the decision to either retrieve Simon's brain for Toltec or destroying it. The Leftover comes into play by establishing the latter as the canonical decision. Therefore, it resumes with Slade having just defeated Simon, prompting Sarah to send him a dropship so that he can return back to his ship. But before Slade can activate the transmitter to signal for extraction, the Rook comes under attack by Toltec vessels, and a squad of soldiers are dispatched to the planet, cutting off Slade from Sarah and forcing him to fight his way through these soldiers throughout the DLC until they're reunited.
Took your time, huh? What happened back there?
Long story, but I should charge more for this job.
But following the incredible success and general reception of Shadowgun, Madfinger would quickly go to work on its multiplayer-only spin-off, Shadowgun Deadzone. Deadzone was released on November 15, 2012 for iOS, Android, and even PC via Facebook, quickly garnering a dedicated following thanks to its engaging and frantic multiplayer. But unfortunately, the game would find itself being delisted and shut down later in 2019. Fortunately, not all was lost though. Bring in Shadowgun Comzone, a quote-unquote fan-made follow-up of Shadowgun Deadzone with the purpose of keeping its retro spirit alive. And not only is this team keeping the game alive, but even actively working on trying to port the whole experience into Unreal Engine. So I mean, huge kudos to these guys for the fact that players can even continue playing this game today. As a multiplayer-focused title, Deadzone came packed with all the trimmings you'd expect out of one, including an arsenal of weapons and gadgets to choose from, a progression system including an optional premium service, skins, and even cosmetics. If I remember correctly, I believe the game only ever launched with 2 modes, being Deathmatch and Zone Control, so I'm pretty sure these extra ones were included by the Comzone team. As for the overall gameplay, it was at its core a straightforward deathmatch game where you ran around and took players out. At your disposal included a handful of gadgets such as grenades, turrets, medkits, and ammo supplies, plus perks like movement and health boost to further your chances of winning. All of this, including a relatively small size of only about 180 megabytes at the time, made it a must-have for everyone. Now as for the third installment, first being announced way back in 2016, then later releasing on March 22nd, 2018, Shadowgun Legends would mark an interesting turning point in the series by no longer being under the shadow of Gears, but rather now under the shadow of, well, the plot of the game, or really lack of, found us again as a Shadowgun mercenary on a quest to hunt down and eliminate the invading alien species known as the Torment, all while obtaining fame and glory. The latter of which the whole game puts a big emphasis on, which sounds about right considering the title of the game. The game starts off with a character creator where the player can choose their legends, gender, and features. That is then followed by a basic tutorial level to familiarize yourself with the game's controls, and from there you're thrown to this central hub-like space that houses the game's many storefronts. That include a weapon shop, armor shop, cosmetic shop, and even our dear old friend Slade himself. The missions themselves are carried out on 4 different planets, all revolving around a repetitive loop of killing enemies, collecting gear, and bettering your character. And much like Destiny, features a branching skill tree system so players can unlock different abilities to improve their legends. Aside from that, the game also reprised the option of PvP so players can duke it out in up to 6 different game modes. While the decision to stray away from its original identity seemed a little divisive, the game for the most part did well for itself, and people seem to continue playing 9 years later. But finally, we come to the most short-lived entry in the series, Shadowgun Wargames. Being teased back in 2019, then later releasing on February 14, 2020, Wargames would again switch its identity and this time adopt its formula around that of a hero shooter. So naturally, it offered your typical DPS, tank, and support classes, along with featuring only a whopping 2 game modes of Capture the Flag and Zone Control. And since it was a hero shooter, it wouldn't be complete without containing a battle pass either. A lot of this game reminds me of a mashup between namely Overwatch, but also a hint of Respawnables. Anyone remember that game? But to bluntly put and keep this segment short, the game didn't do well and ended up being shut down on only its 6th season on August 31st, 2021. Apparently due to technical issues being both time and resource demanding. But there you have it. That is how the Shadowgun series came to its unfortunate end. If you think I could have gotten into more detail or said too little, feel free to let me know. I'm always looking to improve. That said, I hope you found some enjoyment from the video. Till the next one.